black man in America, African in England. Don't forget where you are from. Ghana down to Suriname, taken from my motherland. Don't forget your mother tongue. Please don't shoot me, we are one. Refuge, 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 na ye chen wo. 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 I'm a human being in Africa, but a black man in America, African in England. Don't forget where you are from. Ghana down to Suriname, taken from my motherland. Don't forget your mother tongue. Please don't shoot me, we are one. Refuge, 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 na ye chen wo. 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 Thank you. I'm a human being in Africa, but a black man in America.
Man, and just to show how strong our people are as a people, that we still went through what we went through and still overcame all of that. Where we from, that it's time to come back to the motherland.
All black, all the Western blacks, they need to embrace what Africa is in order for them to grow in their overall spirituality.
And at this point in time, it is crucial for diasporians to return to the motherland. Come and see, because we have been brainwashed for so many years that we truly don't know ourselves anymore. So this is an opportunity for diasporians to come home and see and feel for themselves what it is like to be home.
But I would like to say in conclusion that the most important consequences of all the activity we're here to initiate is that together on both sides of the Atlantic, we will work together to make sure that never again will we allow a handful of people with superior technology to walk into Africa, seize our peoples, and sell them into slavery.
Que veut donc dire ce retour en Afrique dans un contexte de mondialisation? Je vais donc inviter le King Drolor Bosso Adamtey Ier à nous rejoindre pour nous apporter sa réponse.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to first and foremost acknowledge the Prefect of Martinique, who represent the Ministry of French overseas. I'd like to also extend appreciation for the host, and I'd like to thank you, Ms. Sandra Casanova, and your team for putting up something of this magnitude and giving the region and also the world around us the opportunity to dialogue. Thank you so very much for this warm invitation. I'd like to bring you special greetings from Ghana, especially from the Sek Kingdom, where I am the king of Likwejema Dam and also the Swapolo for the Sek Kingdom. I want to say this is my very first time here in the French Caribbean. Now, I've been to the Caribbean, portions of the Caribbean, but it is my first visit here and I'm really liking it. But most importantly, I realize that I am amongst family because some of you look like you from back home. You look like my people look like you. I also want to just extend appreciation for those who've come from other parts of the Caribbean to join us. I've learned that we have about 30 countries or territories within this area, Caribbean region, with 44.3 million people. And those Caribbean countries that speaks English is 19, and the French-speaking is 6. And the purpose of this gathering is not only to address the Caribbean countries and territories to interact with each other, but rather with the rest of the world. I want to remind you that you cannot do this successfully if you ignore Africa. So I'm grateful that Africa has been mentioned in this regard. Let me give you a little history of Ghana. Since my topic is, what does it mean to return to the motherland in the context of globalization? Africa, to many people who are not properly educated, is considered one country. So when you say Africa, they think you're talking about one country. Africa is a continent with 54 nations, and our population is 1.4 billion people on the continent. 24 of the African countries speak English, whilst 20 of them speak French. Ghana, among few countries in Africa, is considered one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Our population is 30 million and still growing. I happen to come from Ghana, born in Ghana, bred in Ghana, educated in Ghana, a little bit in England, and some in the United States of America. But there's one thing very special about Africans, particularly those who are from my country. You reach a certain point in your life, you realize the value of going back and contributing for your national development, and also making sure that you don't get buried in a foreign land. As we gather here today, we are realizing that the world is changing and changing very fast. The world is not as big and as distant as it once was. And to be honest, not too long ago, Ghana, particularly my country, which can be reached in 18 hours, was known as the Dark Continent, because little was known about her. But now, through technology and various platforms, you can reach anywhere in the world in less than a second by a click of a button. The continent that was known as the Dark Continent, for which many people were afraid to go, it's become the place where every power is trying to go in and invest, or to actually find ways to benefit from the remains of Africans' resources. We are all connected virtually. So the world as we know around us is very small, even though it's large. And it's not as distant as it once was. We are connected online, e-commerce, social media, and even video conferencing. And I can say that through technology, we are no longer dealing with just being international. We are now talking today about connecting globally for engagement and also for collaboration. When we look at globalization and also returning to the motherland in this context, I saw my president talking about what has happened and hopefully it will never happen again. And also the song that was sung in my language was saying, "Come back home. Home is awaiting you." Most of us that lives in the Caribbean have roots in Africa. In my particular kingdom, if you go to most of the islands with saints, St. Kitts, St. Verd, most of them come from my own place. I happened to be in Honduras on official duty, and I was taken to a particular place to be entertained by the natives. I met a group of people who entertained me, but I was shocked to hear them speak some of my language, and they call them the Garifunas. I was surprised to realize that they will still maintain part of our history and part of our culture and also part of our tradition. So today when we talk about globalization, I'd like to just address it very briefly and part of what its original intentions were. Globalization, as it was initially introduced, was to provide openness for free movement of capital, labor, technology, knowledge, and commodity. Globalization was also to improve the standard of living of people. Globalization was also to increase economic growth. Globalization was also to increase cultural knowledge of people. Globalization was also to promote tourism. Globalization was intended to bring prosperity and also expand democratic freedoms. And for those who embrace globalization, this is what they were looking for. But there are those who resist globalization even to this very day as I speak, because their resistance and their point of resistance have to do with environmental devastation and exploitation of people and their resources. The concept of globalization has not worked in all places. My observation is that globalization has benefited the West, but not as much as Africa. So this kind of gathering is so important for us to take advantage of, and the countries which we represent should take out of this particular conference values and knowledge exchange, and let's make sure that at least we apply them in our various countries, communities, and also within our various industries. Globalization has not provided other places a level playing field, and the rules are usually dictated by the powerful. Nevertheless, digital revolution and the exponential growth in data flows has by far exceeded capital flows in many parts of the world, particularly, I would say that even within Africa. Since globalization is key, and we all take it as where the world is heading, one important thing I would like to share is that it will be good for the Caribbean and Africa to benefit from globalization in such a way that we shall bridge this connectivity gap and make sure we also take advantage of the global economic opportunities and also develop through global value chain. Knowing well that the global value chain depends on capital nodes in governments, industries, and also in academia. And let's develop this at both the natural and also the regional level. May I also encourage the countries within the Caribbean and Africa that we should make sure that we encourage trade and also make sure that the regional benefit is realized amongst us. For example, Caribbeans doing business in Caribbean should be fully encouraged. And as we are looking at this supply chain, I would like to at least provoke our thinking and our thoughts that we should look beyond the seas and look beyond export and import and look at some new markets, which I'd like to hopefully suggest or maybe answer some of them in the question time. I also want to encourage the Caribbean to look for opportunity to do business with Africa, because Africa is open for business. Particularly, Ghana is very open for business. There is that need for partnership, and there is that need for collaboration. We have to broaden our base and learn to cooperate transglobally. We can't do business in isolation, and I believe we all know that. And no one should live as an island to themselves. We need each other, not just Caribbean with Caribbean, but also Caribbean with Africa, and not just the traditional markets that we know, which is Europe and United States or the Northern Americas. The need of collaboration and partnership is very important, because in the time past, we were all trained to do one thing at a time, but in this 21st century, we are all forced to be very versatile, collaborative, open to new ideas and ways of doing things, and also multitask. We need genuine collaboration for mutual benefits and success on all levels, including human development and supply chain. One of the important things I want us to address critically as we are going through this conference is to ask ourselves this question: what problems are we solving for humanity? The youth explosion is all over the world, and I'm not surprised that it is here too. What are the solutions we are providing to address these challenges that humanity is being faced with? Honestly, it is time for us to come together to create solutions. Let's also create solutions that will provide a win-win situation where one group doesn't suffer at the expense of the other. We all have to bring something tangible to the table in order for this collaboration to be sustainable. And let's remember that even though it's not equal in presentation, but it is also equal in sacrifice. That is something I would like us to focus on. There are realities, there are challenges to even these sustainable partnerships and collaboration that I'm talking about. First and foremost, we must recognize that part of our generation is stuck. We have left problems that if we don't resolve, it will become a major challenge for our young people who are coming up. Most of them have realized the power of education, but not many of them have realized that the education they have gained is providing sustainability for themselves and also for their families. We need to give them the opportunity, particularly the young people, to benefit from such meetings. Because when we were growing up, decisions were made for us by our fathers. But we got to a point where our fathers realized that sons and daughters are now maturing, so they have to be engaged and involved in decision making. Today, if you come to our part of the world, young people are engaging themselves politically, socially, and economically. And there is a revolution that is going on where innovation is forcing young people to ask questions like, what is the purpose of my degree? And what is the purpose of my education? And what can I do to add value to myself, my family, and also make my nation great? And as I speak, if you come to Ghana, we have individuals who have hardly attained university degrees who are manufacturing cars, manufacturing airplanes. We have people who are literally creating equipments and shipping and selling them abroad. And it is amazing to see that young people are beginning to realize that they have to put to use their studies and their experience and create a better future for themselves and also for their loved ones. We have to actually learn to operate outside the old mindsets. We have to be able to create new mindsets or new paradigms so that as we talk about globalization and we talk about supply chain, that it is not only working from the top, but works from the middle as well as those at the bottom. We should be able to dare enough to operate outside the box. I know that operating within the box keeps all of us comfortable, but it's always necessary for us to try to operate outside the box. And if we are bold enough, create new boxes These are the things that I believe can make our world sustainable. And these are some of the things that if our young people begin to find out that decisions are not made without them, but that they are inclusive in the decision, then our nations become strong, our communities become strong, and we add value to the world around us. Today, if you look at some of the new markets which we've so enjoyed, in Africa, there are places where they don't have electricity consistently. But one thing you find out, which around the early 200s, as I was going around Asia, talking to most of the major players in Asia, some of the companies that I happen to be the key advisor for in technology and mobile development, I tell them, don't ignore Africa. Most of them didn't see it as a market that is close. They saw it as a distant market. I said, don't you underestimate Africa, because there's so much happening in Africa, so much that is to happen in Africa. It's not just the resources, but take advantage and expand your markets. Years later, some of them said to me, you were right. Today, if you come to Africa, at least every person that you meet has got at least more than one cell phone, 2 cell phones. Most of the mobile market has tremendous uplift in Africa because Africa has supported that market incredibly. Who even told us that we need iPhone? We used to use Ericsson and other cell phones, but today you find a person who may not make enough money monthly to sustain to us meager income, but yet they have 2 phones. It is amazing. They have 2 phones and they have them all powered. So if electricity is out, they have another one to support them in communication. Whether you are educated or not, cell phone has become something that everybody owns. Whether you know how to text or not, at least you learn how to punch numbers. So when we talk about supply chain, I really want us to not focus on the traditional supply chain as we know, but begin to explore and open our minds up and ask questions that will make this kind of gatherings more practical and more useful. Let us operate outside the box if we can. And if you are daring enough, like Miss Sandra Casanova, try to create new boxes, and you'll be amazed what kind of impact you will have. I am here representing the continent of Africa, but also here to represent Ghana, and here to represent that when you operate outside the box, you can get kings and queens and those who represent millions to follow you. If you can operate outside the box as part of a vision that you hold on dear, you can benefit the world around you. So I'd like us to take a minute and express appreciation for Mrs. Sandra Casanova with a hand clap. And if I may say to you, I'm from Africa, the hand clap is weak. Let's do better. Give her a better hand clap. This is part of supply chain. You are supplying something and you are connecting not only the Caribbean region, but connecting the world. I pray that the next time you come around for such conference, it will go beyond here. You have more nations represented, and hopefully many nations will come and take the vision that you have here to expand and make good in their own areas. Let me talk about action, and also let me talk about coming back to Africa. This year in Ghana, we are celebrating 400 years of enslavement. And Ghana is celebrating return to Africa. We have created opportunities for those who live in the diaspora to come home and get citizenship. They don't have to be born in Ghana to become citizens. If I travel around different parts of the world, I find my people, they are in Bahia. They are in different places of the United States. They are in Puerto Rico. Some in Cuba. Some in the countries in the Caribbean around us. And one of the things that I'm doing personally in creating globalization is to extend land to those who are in the diaspora and who feel Africa is calling them to come home. And if they come, I'll provide them a place, provide them a land, and also try to help them to find their way in the African culture and make sure that they also benefit from our communities. Let's focus on new power instead of old power. And when I mean old power, I'm not talking about political power. I'm talking about economic base and also expanding territories that will create mutual benefit for all. We have to learn to operate on new platforms other than the old traditional platforms. And we also have to find ways and means to have a shared value between Africa and the Caribbean. Let's continue exchanging ideas. Let's continue finding ways to collaborate intellectually and technology-wise. Let's also realize that our destinies are intertwined and that we should not put our lives on hold whilst others benefit from us, but that we should find opportunity amongst us and promote economic growth or provoke each other to find opportunities where we can benefit one another. Whilst we're thinking about supply chain, let me remind us that there are certain individual Africans who may like to come to the Caribbean region and invest. There are many startups that can start here because most of us have what we call free zones. Why don't we use the free zones and come out from always the traditional structures of business and go to the middle age or middle class areas and invite investors from Africa? Come and see the Caribbean. Come and invest. And somebody may come in with 50,000, 100,000, invest in someone within the region who may end up changing the world. Because it just took some few people, young people, who came up with this technology revolution that has changed our world. If it can happen in Europe, it can happen in Americas, it can surely happen in the Caribbean, it can also happen in Africa. So what does it mean to return to the motherland in context of globalization? I'm saying knowledge is no longer isolated. Creativity is no longer isolated. Economic expansion is no longer isolated. Let us open up and let's imagine and let's dream and let's follow our vision, because something positive can come out of this all because we share a common destiny. It is time for us to determine our own destiny. And I'll encourage you, there are certain times we have to allow politicians to do their job. And let's encourage them to do policies that will encourage us to expand our own economic base. Let's do business with populations. Let's do business with business. Let scholars deal with scholars. Let traders deal with traders. Let fabric manufacturers deal with tailors. And let's open opportunities. It doesn't take as much as we think it does. And if we can do that successfully, then just like Africa, we will not be always extending our hands to become beggars, because we control our own destiny and we create opportunity for a shared benefit. This question of supply chain should not be only in the area of transport or just logistics or just a traditional means of business. Let's look beyond and find other means to advance. There are many things here, and if I may add this, because I was talking to Dr. Here a moment ago and talking about if we can capitalize on some of the amazing things you have here. If you come to United States of Africa, United States of America, practically in some of the major cities, you always find a Jamaican restaurant. If you come to certain places in America, you'll find a Cuban restaurant, Colombian restaurant. If you come to Africa, it's beginning to start. So we realize that you don't need McDonald's all the time. You don't need Kentucky Fried Chicken all the time. But you can actually find indigenous opportunities. And let's make sure this supply chain work. I'm speaking not only as a member of this family, but I'm speaking as one who has been sent by Africa, sent by my country to say to you, we are open for business. If you don't have capital, but you have ideas, you can always find somebody with capital to create opportunities. Partnership today is not money to money, ideas to money, vision to dreams, and also finding people you can trust, people you can literally learn from, and people are willing to dare and dream with you to make things happen. Let's look beyond transportation. Let's look beyond that. Let's also make sure that we talk about moving products. Let's look at manufacturing. Let's look at agriculture, technology, as we are looking at goods and services. And let me conclude by saying this. In this region, I know that most of the things that we are talking about have to deal with blue economy, which is critical in this day and age. We can't do without blue economy. It is critical we talk about export and import. We can't do without. Let's look at the opportunities that most of us don't even know we have exist. Remember, I said out of the 54 countries in Africa, 20 of them are French-speaking countries. That means that out of these 20 speaking French countries, 13 of these countries have independent ports. That also means that 65% of the ports in Africa, which is French-speaking, is open for business. There are very few countries that are landlocked. But as long as there's ports, let's talk beyond just this region or this block. And let's find ways and means to do business outside. In fact, if you come to Africa today, Ghana particularly, and some of the West African countries, some of the things we didn't take so important seriously, like shea butter, we realize that it is very, very needed in this day and age. There's so many things we did not think were very necessary. We find out that even herbs that for so long grows in our backyards that we cut and dismiss are ethnomedicinal benefits for the world. Now we're exporting everything. Take advantage. If I can speak to the French Caribbean, take advantage. If I can speak to the Caribbean at large, take advantage. There are 13 independent ports in Africa. They speak your language. Will you find any product and send? There are ways to advance instead of always importing. Why don't you become an exporter too? Let's take advantage of this added value partnerships. Let's explore new markets. Let's create this sustainability, a new platform that can benefit all of us. Let's engage in new industries and not be afraid of it. Let's also look at Israel, for example. A small little country, didn't have much. Today, Israel is exporting agricultural products. They have to literally find ways and means to bring navigation or create water for themselves, but they're exporting. The Caribbean region has a beautiful landscape, and there's a lot that can be done so that we don't have to suffer from brain drain. So our young generation will be traveling abroad and be doing manual jobs, when in actual fact they've gained educational experience, degrees. What can we do to keep them here rather than losing them? What can we do to make sure that our society becomes strong rather than making it weak? Let us engage. Let us do business differently. Let's look for secondary markets. Let's not be afraid to do what we've never done before. Let's develop new skills. And I say to you, for globalization purposes and return to the motherland, come with me to Ghana, and I promise you, you'll never want to return. God bless you.